Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Yet another update on OTC trunk injection. So we have lots of field trials going on, and several of them we have injected now for 3 consecutive years. So I'm going to present a summary of some of the results. Some of it you may have heard at other presentations, but the more you hear it, maybe it will be memorized better. So this first one I want to talk about is a Hamlin trial. It's been going on since 2023. There are Hamlin and Carrizo. Trees were planted in 2005. They're in Polk County. So we started injecting in 2023. One of the objectives in this trial was to determine the optimal OTC dose. Again, this was started in 2023. CRDF had asked us to figure out, can we save money by reducing the rate, or do we really need a higher rate? So this was, like I said, one of the objectives. So we tested anything from 0.55 gram per tree. So this would be 100 milliliter of a 5500 ppm solution to 1.65 gram per tree, which is the maximum allowed dose for mature trees. And this high dose, we injected 2-sided just because we couldn't fit the 150 mil in one injector, or we didn't want to. So we split it up in 0.825 on 2 opposite sides. And the other doses were injected on one side only in year 1 and 2. But since we're seeing so much better results with 2-sided injection in year 3, we switched to 2-sided injection for all rates or doses. So keep that in mind when looking at the data. So these Hamlin trials we injected in June or in May. I will get into that later. And we injected into the scion because we didn't feel comfortable injecting into this massive rootstock. And we had 10 replications of 3 trees each, so a fairly good trial size. So a lot of my data are box plots. So for those of you who are not familiar with these, I want to explain them briefly. So basically the box is the range in which the middle 50% of all your data lies. So they can be bigger or smaller. And then we have these whiskers. So on the bottom, that's the minimum value in your data series, and then the maximum value on the top. The median is usually here the line. And then I like to add the mean or the average of our data too. So box plots are really the most transparent of all data presentations because you can have smaller ones or larger ones. So it gives you an idea of how dispersed your data are. Sometimes you have a little dot here or multiple dots. These are usually outliers that don't really fit in the data set. So first data set, we're looking at the fruit drop in year 1 after 1 injection. On the bottom, on the x-axis, you see the blue boxes are always the control. The increasing shades of red are our increasing OTC doses. So you can see in year 1, the pre-harvest fruit drop is relatively low. We only counted at one time point, like just before the harvest. But you can see there is a slight difference between for the injected doses to be lower. In year 2, so remember, we had an overall much higher fruit drop rate. If you will remember, we had Hurricane Milton crossing the state, so we lost about 50% of fruit, at least in our control trees. But you can see that especially the highest dose reduced the fruit drop significantly. So let's take a look at the fruit yield. So after 1 injection in year 1, so we harvested the trees in December of that same year. You can see there may be a trend for the injected trees to be a little bit higher in yield, but it's not statistically significant. In year 2, remember the yield was reduced because of the hurricane. But we can see now we have significant increases. I think this is about 2-fold higher the yield, especially if you look at the highest dose of oxytetracycline compared with the non-injected trees. And this is what we observed this year or last year, not actually this year. Yeah, we harvested in January, so a little bit later. You can see there now we have all doses injected, double-sided, and you can see there's a strong correlation. The more OTC you inject, the better your yield. So pretty straightforward. And remember, 2-sided all injections. So we had here almost a triple, I think it's about 2.7 increase for the highest dose compared with the control. So we were very excited about these data. So this is how the trees look. Tree on the left, pretty obvious, was the injected tree. And this is pretty typical for this for this trial. You really don't need a map. You recognize right away which tree was injected. So as a close-up, obviously the fruit quality is much better. And aside from the canopy health, again, no OTC trees and OTC trees. So in addition to the yield benefit, you also get a benefit on pricks. If you're testing new treatments, to me, yield is always variable, especially in the first year. But if you know that something is working, it's because your pricks increases. Now, of course, we are researchers. We always have non-injected controls, and you don't have that. So you still may not like your pricks, but if you wouldn't inject, you would be much worse off. So in year 1, you can see compared to the control, we have a slight increase in pricks, usually a half, 3/4 of a pricks. Same thing in year 2. But look at year 3, we had a lot of, I guess, favorable conditions in terms of it being colder. So we have a pricks of 11, up to 11 with the highest dose compared to 9. And for Hamlin's, that's not all that bad. Of course, the same thing for the pound solids per box, strongly correlated with pricks. Moderate increases in year 1 and 2, and a strong increase of up to 6 pound solids per box, nearly for the highest dose. So pretty good results. 3 consecutive years of injection, cumulative improvements in yield and pricks. In a lot of our trials, we measure all kinds of juice quality traits. So juice color is one of the things that we often see an improvement, especially here in year 3. So juice color is also significantly better with the injections. So oxidative cycling residues in the fruit are also important. So for this project, we're doing that. We're sending the samples to a certified lab in North Carolina. And we are using the whole fruit with peel, juice, and all. We were told by the regulators to do it that way. So we don't have the data for this year, but these are the 2 previous years of data. So pretty obvious, more OTC, higher fruit residues in both years. This is the maximum residue limit, so 10 parts per billion or 0.01 parts per million. Is very strictly regulated, and you can see in year 1 with our higher doses we are a little bit above what we would like it to be, but in year 2 we are below even with our highest dose. Why is that? So it's interesting. So in year 1 we couldn't get into the grove until June 1st, and we harvested beginning of December. So in year 2 we just pushed it a little bit earlier, not much, like about 8 days, end of May. Harvested a few days later, so you have maybe 2 weeks longer, and you can see already are we below the maximum residue level. So keep in mind when you inject how it will affect your residues. So we're doing the same that we've done for the Hamlin for a Valencia trial in the same location, same objectives, 3 consecutive years of injection, different doses. In this trial, we're also testing different months of injection and other things. This is just a preview of some of the data. So this is how the trees looked about a week after the freezes that we had, unfortunately, this year. On the left, an OTC tree, and on the right, a tree that has never seen any OTC. So pretty obvious. Here you see the fruit yield for all 3 years. And here, compared to the Hamlins, in year 1, we already see a significant increase, maybe not that impressive, like 25 to 30%. But in year 2, we can see here over a 2-fold increase, especially with the highest dose. And then in year 3, you can see again the strong correlation. Here 2 two-sided injections in year 3, strong correlation. The more OTC, the better your yield. So, and fruit quality, it's not only affecting the juice, the internal quality, but also the external quality. Usually compared with the control, we're seeing better fruit size, better peel color, and all those things. So if you're for a fresh fruit market, that may also be of interest. And again, the higher the dose, the better your juice and fruit quality. So I'll give a Zoom seminar next week, so it's a little bit longer. And in this seminar, we did a lot of other things in these 2 trials. So for example, what's the best month of injection? Do I need to inject every year? So you can join the Zoom meeting and you will hear more data on that. So our 3rd trial, and I want to talk about, I'm good in time, perfect. It's a Valencia trial on different rootstocks. That trial was established by CRDF in, I think, 2015. And they're pretty highly densely planted, so 303 trees per acre. We have 6 rootstocks, the 3 of the USDA varieties, USA 12, 897, 942, 2UF, UFR 2 and 4, and our standard at this location, Carrizo. So these trees started the injections in 2023. The dose was about 0.8. I think one of the years we had 0.825, and then we injected 1.1 gram of OTC. And it's a pretty big trial. There's over 4,000 trees in this location, and we're working together with a commercial injection crew to get this all done. Oh yeah, so yeah, here's just the size of the trial to get you an idea. So here you see the data for the fruit yield, and each individual box is for each rootstock. The blue, again, is our non-injected control. The red boxes are our injected trees. So you can see the yield is about maybe 50 pounds of fruit per tree, not particularly impressive, but you can see there's a significant increase. The red boxes are a little bit higher. And across all rootstocks, we have an increase of about 24% in year 1. What happens in year 2? You can see it's getting a little better. And compared with the control, our average increase was about 57%. And now look at year 3. So that was this year, which was maybe, when did we harvest, Larissa? 2 weeks after the freezes, or a little bit, I think March. Okay, so it was after the freezes, so the fruit were still starting to drop, but you can see now we had not only do we have a significant increase in yield in the injected trees compared with the control, you can see that overall the yield increases, so also in the controls. And that's interesting because you just heard Dr. Stalinsky talk about the psyllids acquiring less inoculum, and this is my interpretation for these results. I mean, obviously the trees are getting older, so that maybe they're producing more fruit. That can be a factor. But in this trial, we only have 2 rows of controls that are surrounded on each side with 5 rows of injected trees. So basically, we are creating a less hot zone in this trial. So there's less bacterial load. So I'm assuming that this will be beneficial to the control trees too. So that's why you see that overall increase in productivity in this trial. So pretty interesting in this location. So after 3 consecutive years of injection in this location, this trial, 462 boxes per acre for the injected trees and 219 boxes per acre for the controls. So I think that's pretty good. In addition, we get another bonus for if you look at the total soluble solids. So here again by rootstock, you can see it's not particularly impressive. I think we're hovering around 9, even with our injections. The second year, the same thing. We had to harvest a little bit early in the second year, so Prix is lower. But look at it this year. So again, the cooler temperatures probably helped. But we had Prix of up to 11. In some of our, for some of our rootstocks. So obviously there are strong rootstock effects. US 897 is usually always our best rootstock in terms of juice quality and Prix. So we have almost 2 Prix differences here after 3 years. So, the juice tasted amazing this year. So it's not just the Prix, it's the whole flavor is back, at least in my opinion. We have been drinking a lot of juice. And this is just a picture from my student. She's here today, Larissa. She in charge of this trial. On the left side, the non-injected, and on the right side, the injected trees. So that's typical for this location. And this is US 897. So we did other things in this trial. For example, we compared rootstock versus scion injection in year 1 and year 2. And in year 3, we compared 2-sided versus 1-sided injection. So if you want to hear more about those data, you can, again, listen to me next week. We did a lot of sweet orange trials. So this year last year, we started to look into some of the grapefruits. And looking at Star Rubies in particular. So this is a location in Picos Farm in Fort Pierce. I'm working with Dr. Bowman. So these were trees that were had the IPCs. As you can see, they have this lollipop shape. But after the IPCs were removed, We injected the trees only once last year, and you can see already the difference. Grapefruit seemed to respond even more visibly to the OTC injections than Valencia. So it was pretty obvious in this trial, and we had a little bit of yield that we measured and juice quality, so we already had significant effects there. This is another trial that's neighboring these trees. Is a rootstock trial with Star Ruby. They never had IPCs, so they looked a little bit rough when we injected, but this is just one injection in the following year, Star Ruby on 802. On the left, obviously injected tree. Same thing here, US 1516, sour orange, left injected, right not, Cleopatra. So the differences, and these are paired trees. We don't have many reps, so it's pretty impressive because we had really few trees in this trial. And that concludes my presentation, and thank all the grower collaborators without who we couldn't do it, and of course funding agencies, CRDF in particular for these trials, but also USDA NIFA, and last but not least my awesome team. So thank you.